For Claire, the promotion and the move to a new city were supposed to represent a fresh start. At 26, she was eager to leave behind the familiar comforts of her hometown for the challenge of a mid-sized city and a more senior role at the marketing firm. Her new apartment was a sleek, modern box in a recently developed complex, all concrete and glass, and her commute was a blessedly short 15-minute straight shot down a main thoroughfare. It was on a Tuesday evening, just as the autumn sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, that the first thread of her new life began to unravel. She was listening to a true crime podcast, half her mind on the narrator's tale of intrigue and the other on the grocery list she needed to tackle, when her phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Glancing down, she saw a notification she'd only ever read about in online safety articles. AirTag, found moving with you. Her first reaction was dismissive annoyance. Great, she thought. Some idiot probably dropped their keys in the parking lot at work. But a worm of doubt began to gnaw at her. She opened the Find My app. The message was stark and unequivocal. This AirTag had been traveling with her for over an hour. It had been with her for her entire commute home. The timing was too precise, the duration too long for it to be a coincidence. A cold knot tightened in her stomach. This wasn't a mistake. Someone had placed a tracker on her car, and that meant they knew where she worked, the route she took home, and, most terrifyingly, where she lived. Pulling into her assigned parking spot, she sat for a moment, her hands clenched on the steering wheel. She was now faced with an impossible choice. She could drive around aimlessly, wasting gas and time, or she could go inside her apartment, potentially leading a predator directly to her doorstep. With no other viable option, she chose the latter. The walk from her car to her building's entrance feeling like a mile-long gauntlet. Once inside, the lock on her apartment door clicked shut, with a sound that felt flimsy, inadequate. She dropped her bags and immediately went back down to her car, armed with a flashlight on her phone. She searched frantically under the seats, in the glove compartment, the center console, the trunk, the spare tire. Well, she ran her hands along the seams of the upholstery, checked the seams of the floor mats. Nothing. The car was clean, yet her phone continued to insist the phantom device was with her. A digital ghost haunting her every move. The logical part of her brain screamed to call the police. But what would she say? Hello? 911? My phone says there's an invisible thing following me. They would ask for the device, and she had no device to show them. Without physical evidence, it was just a paranoid story. She tried to reassure herself. Her building had a key fob entry system. Her apartment door was solid core with a deadbolt. She was safe. Inside, the next morning, the notification reappeared the moment she started her car. A wave of nausea hit her as she drove to work, her eyes constantly flicking to the rearview mirror, searching for a face that didn't belong. The workday was a write-off. She couldn't concentrate, her mind a whirlwind of fear and suspicion. Every colleague who passed her desk, every stranger in the elevator, was a potential suspect. That evening, she resolved to find the AirTag. It had to be there. Technology wasn't infallible, but it wasn't usually this persistently wrong. She spent over an hour on a second, even more thorough search, her frustration mounting with every passing minute. She was about to give up, her knuckles scraped and dirty from probing dark crevices, when she ran her hand deep into the narrow gap where the bottom of the back seat met the backrest of the rear passenger seat. Her fingertips brushed against something small, smooth, and rectangular, wedged deep into the seam. Using her nails, she pried it loose. There it was, a pristine white AirTag, cold and impersonal in her palm. The reality of it, the physical proof of the violation, made her hand shake so violently she almost dropped it. She took it inside, placing it on her kitchen counter like a poisonous insect. She didn't know what to do with it. Destroying it felt right, but it was also evidence. Instead, she pried it open with a butter knife and removed the coin cell battery, rendering it inert. The immediate threat was neutralized, but the psychological damage was done. The thought that someone, an ex-boyfriend, A disgruntled coworker, a complete stranger, had been inside her personal space, had been monitoring her life for days or even weeks, made her skin crawl. She felt exposed, as if her privacy had been stripped away, layer by layer. The next day at work was worse. The fear had mutated into a deep-seated paranoia. She jumped at slamming doors, avoided parking garages, and took a different, longer route home. When she finally pulled into her parking spot, exhaustion weighing heavily on her, the day's final horror awaited her. Her apartment door was already open, not keyed in, not forced, just open. A 2-inch sliver of darkness between the door and the frame. Her blood turned to ice. She lived alone. No one else had a key. She didn't push it open. She didn't call out. Every instinct, every lesson from a lifetime of consuming true crime, told her not to go inside. She backed away slowly, then turned and sprinted to her car, locking the doors and calling 911 with trembling fingers. The police were thorough. They cleared the apartment, their flashlights cutting beams through the darkness. But they found nothing. No forced entry, no fingerprints on the knob or frame, no disturbed belongings. It was as clean and sterile as when she had left it that morning. Standing in her living room with the 2 officers, the absurdity and terror of the situation crashed down on her. She finally showed them the screenshots of the AirTag notifications and told them about the device now sitting, battery-less, on her counter. Their demeanor shifted from routine to concerned. "Miss, this is a serious matter," one officer said. "Do you have any history of being stalked? Any ex-partners who might hold a grudge?" Claire racked her brain. There was Mark, the accountant she'd dated for a few months. It had ended amicably. There was Jake, the guy from the gym, a little intense, but nothing alarming. There were a handful of other fleeting relationships, but no one who stood out as capable of this level of calculated menace. She had no answers. In the weeks that followed, the active threat seemed to recede. There were no more notifications, no more open doors. The police increased patrols in her complex, but without any new incidents, their involvement dwindled. The stalker, whoever they were, had likely been spooked by the police presence. But Claire couldn't live there anymore. The apartment, once her sanctuary, now felt like a fishbowl. Every shadow held a threat. Every creak was a footstep. She broke her lease and moved to a different complex across town, though cost a small price to pay for a semblance of peace. She didn't think she was followed. The stalking seemed to have stopped, but the mystery remained, a festering wound on her psyche. The how was the thing that kept her up at night. The door hadn't been damaged. It had been unlocked with a key that no one else should have possessed. The violation wasn't just that someone had been in her home. It was that they had come and gone with such effortless, invisible access. They had been a ghost, and ghosts are impossible to keep out.